Welcome back to theCUBE, RSAC 2026 in San Francisco. I'm Christophe, Bertrand, Principal Analyst at theCUBE Research, and I am joined today by Scott Woodgate, who's the GM, Threat Protection, or is it Threat Protection? Threat Protection, not Management, at Microsoft. But I guess protection and management, well, probably about the same. So, Scott, tell us about yourself, tell us what you do. It's a big title, it's a big job, it's Microsoft. Tell us more.
Sure, well firstly Christophe, thank you for having me on the show. And yeah, absolutely, we're focused on, as you say, threat protection, which is ensuring that our customers are in the strongest possible position to mitigate threats. And as you know, the cyber threat landscape has continued to escalate, with the number of password attacks going up to 7,000 per second as an example. And in fact, Microsoft gets more than 100 trillion, can you imagine that? 100 trillion threat intelligence signals every single day. So what do you do when you're in the SOC to really prevent that? And the SOC itself is challenged because the number of humans that they have. I mean, all of you that are out there working as SecOps analysts, you know your jobs are very busy and you wish there was 3 more of you in your roles. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about how to help the SecOps teams with tools such as Microsoft Sentinel and Copilot and to sometimes Defender. And then how do agents, as we go through this transformative stage, really accelerate the effectiveness of everybody?
Right, and big brand names that everybody's heard, and I said management, thinking it's really a management issue, and let's talk about that because, surprisingly, this is supposed to be a cybersecurity event.
Right.
AI is everywhere.
Of course.
And of course we're talking about AI and AI agents, and I think the real conversation is, and the risk that some people have raised is, okay, well, is AI going to replace me? Whereas actually it turns out AI agents can really, really help you with a lot of tasks and make you a lot more efficient. So how does that play out in the security operations sort of teams? What about all of the type of tests that can be happening? What about the blue team, red teams? How does that all play out? How do you leverage agents to be your friends, not your enemy?
Exactly. So firstly, in cybersecurity, it may be different than some other spaces. There's 4 million open jobs right now. So I spent a lot of time this week at RSA talking to CISOs, and they're all about how do I take the small number of people that I have and improve their overall effectiveness. And it's not that their people aren't doing their very best, it's that the tooling that they have is the tooling they have today. And so agents provide a real opportunity to take automation to the next level and fundamentally upskill the roles that people have so that that employment gap actually can be filled by the partnership between people and agents. And so we do a lot thinking about what are the I call them the tier 1 tasks, but what are the simpler tasks that are actually a lot of the time that security teams spend doing? They spend a lot of time triaging alerts, fishing around, so to speak, not to use a pun, to find the actual real phishing from the spam and the bulk. That's one thing they do in emails. And that is a job that is very important, but also agents can do for you, so that you can then, and we can come into this a little bit later, upskill into the next level of things that you need to do.
Right, so let's talk about how you at Microsoft use agents in a context of cybersecurity. I mean, I'm a Microsoft user, I use a lot of platforms. Obviously I've seen significant changes as just a PC user. Definitely a lot of other changes have happened across the board, across the offerings and the stack. But give us maybe a summary of also what you've announced recently with this event, because there are some significant things you're doing, building on existing previous announcements and products and solutions, but also announcing very interesting new capabilities that I believe will be very critical to what you just described, which is expanding the ability for humans to be more efficient in the face of hundreds of trillions of threats.
That's exactly right. Yeah, I mean, if I take you quickly on the journey and then to the announcements, I don't know, it feels like about 3 years ago we announced Security Copilot as the first generative AI. A lot has changed since then as we think about the maturity of AI technologies, also our understanding of which tasks are better implemented through AI versus other things. if I could just hit that for the moment, there's really 3 agents that I think are the most popular 3 agents in SecOps. The first one is a phishing triage agent.
Okay.
And this phishing triage agent, once again, users don't know the difference between spam and bulk and phishing. They're all annoying, or they're all security threats according to users. But actually only one of them is a security threat, that's phishing. And with these new LLMs, agents are very efficient at reading context in emails, right, and also learning from guidance that security teams will give them. And so we built a phishing triage agent that is in controlled tests 6.5 times faster than people on finding this work, 77% increase in accuracy, okay, and more importantly, saves hundreds of hours. I have one customer who's saved 200 hours a month in their security operations team by implementing, just because the queue of things that they had to focus on is now focused on what is real phishing. So we've got a lot of value from that, and we've just, as an announcement, as one of many, extended that phishing triage agent to be more of a security alert triage agent. And so it covers now cloud security alerts. What's the low value ones, we'll manage them for you. What's the low value identity alerts, we'll manage them for you. Once again, so you can focus on things that add a whole lot more value than that.
Right, so I think this is critical because we've conducted research at theCUBE Research, and one of the questions we asked was how many alerts do you disregard, and the number, I can remember the exact number, it was essentially very, very high.
Staggeringly high.
Essentially, yeah, most alerts are not deemed critical.
Yes.
They're excluded. And thinking, well, hang on, how do you know they're critical or not critical, given that the enemy morphs and changes all the time? So you, yep, don't really know what you don't know what you don't know, and you're saying it's not critical. So I think there's a big gap. Mm-hmm. What you're doing is 2 things. Number one, what I'm hearing is there's a scalability question. Now you can, mm-hmm, literally handle, yes, the sort of inbound volume of alerts, making you actually more fit for purpose as an operations team, a security team, meaning you actually are doing your job. Finally, you have, mm-hmm, the ability to do your job at scale. Yes. I think that's really key. Secondly, what I'm also hearing is the significant operational efficiency happening with this. Now, I had a very good conversation with, I'm sure you know them, KnowBe4, great training outfit. Yeah. Totally different space, but very close, of course, to the cybersecurity space. And of course, this idea of training and, mm-hmm, and leveraging agents to better train individuals, but also maybe retraining the workforce, because, yes, that's the biggest issue we have right now. Cyber skills are lacking. Mm-hmm. There's too much to do, not enough time, not enough budget. Yes. So could it be that instead of this myth, which I think is a myth, that agents will take away your job, mm-hmm, agents in the context of cyber security in general terms, mm-hmm, are actually going to help you do your job and do a better job and augment your visibility to management, to leadership, to business, because now you can become more of a partner, mm-hmm, in the face of the mounting risk we still see from cyber attackers. So I'd really like to get your take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very much the case. In fact, I'll give you another example of an agent that we have that addresses one of the most common questions that the security team or CISOs get. You know, an executive, maybe it's the CEO, someone in the C-suite, looked on the interwebs and found the latest threat, and then comes to you and says, is this a problem for us? Yeah. That's a super common scenario. And so we built a TI briefing agent that's also actionable. And so it's like, for old school people like me, it's like your daily newspaper of, right, here's all of the very relevant threats. Hyper relevant to my industry, my region, so it's really framed in the context of my world. And that information is interesting, but once you find something that might be problematic, or maybe what your, right, CEO asked, then you can go into the exposure section of this agent, and that will actually tell you, am I exposed? Is there a CVE that's being exploited as a result of that? And do I have, for example, a container issue, and is there a container CVE, and then where are the Linux-based machines, and then all the way down to how do I patch it? And so that cycle sometimes takes a while to navigate a series of tools. Right. And the agent can help you just click through and find that very, very quickly, and then remediate it and report back up to your CEO that life is safe. Now, that's where we are today. If you dial forward in a not very long period of time, those agents are going to start becoming semi-autonomous, right, and actually doing some of that work on your behalf, which is really the next exciting part of this evolution. Still under your control, but, right, taking more action. Yeah.
Well, as you said, you qualified it's still under your control. So a lot of times we talk about AI in the loop. Now it's really the human in the loop, really, in a sense. So what do you mean by under your control? Obviously, agents talking to each other, there is at some point a decision point that has to happen. How do we know that individuals, that the people, the processes are actually ready for that? Because it feels to me like the acceleration of innovation has been such that things are changing so quickly.
Yes.
I wonder to what extent people, in this case, can catch up and understand that it is their responsibility now to, instead of trying to survive the day with all the alerts, to actually now make some pretty important decisions about what to let happen or not happen, when before maybe they were never exposed to those types of decisions.
Correct. I mean, I could go from a couple, I'll take one angle and I maybe do a second one in a minute, but if I think of the security teams today, there's lots of doing, and a fair amount of that doing is on lower value tasks. They're actually extremely valuable because if the security team doesn't do it, nobody does it. But in the scheme of things, the security team wish they had more time for hunting and other things. And so the agents now, when they become semi-autonomous, can go do that work. In fact, the flow I just described, an agent should be able to look at your threat intelligence that affects your organization and then go hunt and see if you are affected and then actually proactively fix the posture. But we're not ready in most cases to say, yes, agent, just go do that and take control of my whole organization. And for good reasons, in terms of verifiability of agents and the just trust that people have in technology needs to grow over time. And so there's going to be a role for SecOps, which is orchestrating or traffic controlling all of these agents. And so, as an agent comes up and says, I found this TI, do you want me to do this with it? Or I wanted to fix your posture, do you want me to do this? And so there's going to be this new role that, it's a little bit like the transition actually between on-premises security and cloud security, which I'm old, so I was part of, where the scope of people's roles changed in a broader sense, and they therefore could do higher value tasks because they were no longer doing the on-premises network storage and so forth, but now they could have a broader scope of orchestrating across things. And so the role was a far more interesting role. It was just different than the prior role. And we're going through the same evolution. And frankly, there'll be some people who see that and cotton on to it and make the transition over. And I hope it isn't like cloud security, where actually it took a bunch of a new generation of people to recognize the opportunity to go do this. So, so if you're already currently doing this, there's some good lessons from the transition to cloud security, where actually getting out and using these things and seeing how they can help you upskill and up-level your game and be more valuable is really important. Because once again, in this space, it really isn't about my job, it's about my effectiveness.
That makes perfect sense. The one thing that I find fascinating is I think a lot of organizations are really ahead of their skis. They're letting agents sort of roam maybe a little too free. Whereas when you think about the space of cybersecurity and the application to what is really hyper automation, for lack of a better term, becoming more intelligent, more autonomous. I see a lot of, to your point, a lot of analogies with how cloud evolved.
Exactly that.
I remember you'd get walked out of the room if you said cloud in a briefing with the financial industry years ago. Now if you don't say AI, you probably get walked out of the room the same way. So things have changed drastically. If you take a step back, and I've asked a lot of people this question, there's always this conversation around regulations and what should the government do? The White House published some recommendations. The previous administration did too. They're kind of different, but the same in some areas. Then you have Europe as well, which loves regulations, but is not necessarily enforcing or implementing as much as we think quite yet. Obviously, you're a big global organization. You get to see a world of threats. What do you think about this sort of private, public-private partnership government? What do you hope for in how maybe because it's a security and a national security issue in many cases, what do you hope for in terms of what the government can do to help organizations and maybe individuals be more aware and be more in control?
Yeah, I mean, so firstly I would say security is a team sport with our partners, but also, as you say, with government institutions, and Microsoft as a global company takes in all types of inputs from different countries and the different regulations, and absolutely respects whatever regulations exist in whatever countries. In terms of preference, I think I've seen some good examples actually in the US recently of, hey, this isn't particularly secure, you should know about it. And so the role of advocacy where things are not secure and driving change on that, I think is an important role that governments can have with their folks. I would say that some things it's really helpful to be globalized. So for example, the threat intelligence knowledge base, if you're in a particular country and all you knew was the threat intelligence within your country, you aren't probably set up for the threats that often come from countries that are not yours. And so this notion of collective defense or global sharing of threat intelligence is actually a critical piece for us to stay ahead of attackers, because they don't respect our state boundaries, if you like, or others. So collaboration in that sense is really important. And yeah, different people will have different views on governance of data and where it needs to be. And at Microsoft, we're in a beautiful place of having many data centers around the world. And so if you want your data center here and your data here, we give you many of those choices that others maybe build on top of us sometimes to do.
Right. Yeah. And you're right. Pretty amorphous global threat in a sense, and yeah, you don't really know what's going to hit you from where. And having this global knowledge and maybe some better standards globally is certainly not a bad idea. Although I do like private initiative as well and innovation, so it's really striking that balance.
Yeah, I mean, we always want to, as Microsoft, I mean, we work with partners all the time who are doing things that are bleeding edge, that are really exciting, and that's what I love about us having an open ecosystem. In fact, we built Sentinel as a platform so that even if your customer isn't using our SaaS products, you as a vendor can go ahead and build on our data lake and use our graph and our primitives, and then get access to our customer base and scale. And so we've seen companies like Illumio and others get scale with large customers. In fact, I was listening to one this morning who was talking about this exact scenario because they could partner with us on the platform.
Well, scale matters in the end, that's for sure.
100%.
Right, so in closing, what recommendations do you have for our viewers? What should they do next?
Yeah, I mean, if your organization owns E5, ME5, then recently we announced that Security Copilot is included actually. And we've been rolling that out for the last several months, and we have about 3 more months to complete that rollout, in which case every customer with ME5 will now have a significant allocation to use Security Copilot. And what that means is you can go get your triage agent or security triage agent or phishing triage agent and turn it on, your TI briefing agent and turn it on. If you're an identity admin, your conditional access optimization agent and turn it on. And so there's a very broad base of the population, once we've finished the rollout in 3 months, if you haven't already got it, that actually has access to the technology, and so for no additional cost. And so then it's just a matter of getting and rolling up your sleeves, actually using it, understanding the value, and then taking yourself on the career journey to continue to differentiate as you move forward.
Well, you heard it here. Roll up your sleeves, get it for free, right?
Included, yes.
And included, and try it out and learn from it. Well, thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Christophe. I appreciate you.
And to our viewers, thank you very much. We'll be right back. RSAC 2026 in San Francisco.